Now, obviously, over the last week, I've done the opposite. Sometimes I do like 2 videos, 2 days in a row, 3 videos, 3 days in a row, or 4 videos in a 5-day period, or 5 videos in a 7-day period. And I always categorize that as I'm spoiling you guys. Well, last week I went away from that because this is my first video since a week ago today, since last Monday. Yeah. So this one, a few times I've gone a whole week without doing a video. The only thing I've done since last Monday was I had my Patreon exclusive live stream for my $10 Patreon subscribers and up. I did that on Thursday afternoon. So my Patreon subscribers have heard from me in the last week, but nobody else. What I want to talk about on this video, I think it goes without saying by now, man, that, a large part of my content, particularly on my free videos, as opposed to my Patreon exclusive videos, comes from stuff either people say in my comment section or stuff that I hear myself on other people's live streams and podcasts, or audio clips or video clips that followers of mine send me that are from other people's live streams and podcasts. Usually what followers send me is stuff, again, either where my name is mentioned, or if my name is mentioned, it's stuff that they feel is related to the contents of my books or the contents of my videos. So yeah, the main thing I'm going to talk about in this video is 2 things I heard 2 different podcasters say. One, I've been hearing a bunch of people, and I want to say this arguably started even with the growing popularity of the MGTOW movement, that there's a lot of guys nowadays that believe that you shouldn't approach women at all. That you shouldn't approach women or pursue women for romantic or strictly sexual companionship at all. That you should allow women to come to you. And along with that argument, some guys are making an argument that game is, and I did a recent video where I talked about the whole notion of guys having game, and how some people support the concept of game while other people harshly criticize the concept of game. And a lot of guys have this belief, again, number one, that you should never pursue women or make the first move on women, that you should essentially just put yourself in a position for women to come to you. And by virtue of doing so, there would be no need for game. That's false. I'm going to discuss that in more detail in just a little bit. And the second thing I heard from someone else's podcast or live stream was a totally invalid comment. And I'm actually cover this in my Patreon exclusive. I don't think I'm going to cover this in the free portion. I'm going to cover this in my Patreon exclusive portion. Somebody made the incredibly highly invalid comment that if a woman is really attracted to you, 2 things. Number one, she will never ever give you a hard time. She will make it incredibly easy for you to get in her pants. Not just yet. And you know what I was about to insert. And number 2, along the lines of what I just said a couple minutes ago, that if a woman is really attracted to you, there's no need for game. Okay. So yeah. Well, first of all, before I get to my two main things, I received an email from a follower of mine, specifically a black male follower of mine. And he gave me an interesting assessment. It wasn't something I haven't heard before. Matter of fact, I've had probably at least 2 or 3 people give me the same assessment before. It kind of relates. If y'all been following me for more than 2 years here on YouTube, and even longer than that before I even got to YouTube, I've told this story on at least, 3 or 4 YouTube videos about what I call the 3 street pimp story. Which I don't want to rehash the whole story again, but basically, I had 3 pimps that initially hated on me. 2 were street pimps from LA, and 1 was a street pimp from New York. And they happened to be friends with guys who I was friends with. And basically, they hated on me before they read Mo 1, but then after they read Mo 1, they gave me my due. They gave me my respect and my credit. But before they read my book, they had this attitude. I tend to have this perception that makes people give me nicknames like College Boy. That's what these pimps, that was their nickname for me. They called me College. Their attitude was basically like, what does College Boy know about street game? That's what they called it, street game. They said, what does College Boy know about street game? But then again, after they read my book, Mo 1, they actually did end up giving me my respect. Because among other things, they said they felt like the manner in which I'm able to explain a lot of elements of game and break it down in such a detailed and analytical manner to the point where middle class, upper middle class, nerdy types could understand it. That's where they gave me the highest marks. They said this brother knows how to break down game like a college professor. Anyway, going back to the guy this weekend who sent me an email. He said, Alan, he watched 2 videos. This was in response to 2 videos he said he watched. One was a recent video when I was talking about the video where I mentioned Sanaa Lathan. And I started off that video talking about that whole Jason Pope DJ Kid. And anyway, I made the comment that I don't mess around with, basically, for lack of a better term, ghetto street bitches. And which is something I clarified in my Patreon exclusive video on Thursday. Because somebody asked me, they said, Alan, I want a clarification on this. I knew this was coming. He said, are you saying you've never messed around with women who are ghetto in their behavior, or women who simply grew up in the ghetto? Because if it's the second, I would tend to say you being full of shit, because I know for a fact you've stated before that you've messed around with women who came from the ghetto. And yeah, so that was a valid question. And yeah, I have. I've messed around with women who grew up in the street, so to speak, or, in the ghetto or the hood, but their behavior was not hood. So I always have to make that clarification, particularly not only to other black people, but even more so non-black people. Just because somebody grew up in a lower socioeconomic background does not automatically mean their behavior is going to be ghetto-like or ratchet, or just what some of us blacks bluntly call just the behavior of an ignorant ass nigga. Just because you grew up in a lower, so that does not mean your behavior is going to be like that. So I want to make that clear, and that's something I clarified in my Patreon exclusive live stream this past Thursday. Is I know women, like, for example, that I went to college with, who carried themselves in a very classy manner, even though when they were in either elementary or middle school or even up to high school, they came from a lower socioeconomic background. And so yeah, I want to make that clear on this video, is that I don't want to stereotype and say that all people who grew up in lower socioeconomic backgrounds, particularly black women, publicly act ghetto, because that's not true. That's not true. But anyway, this guy, he watched that video, and he said there was one other video. Oh, I think it was a video. See, I can't remember the second video, and I need to write this type of stuff down. I think the other video he watched was another video where I was talking about black people and social stratification. Anyway, to get to the point, he said, Alan, he said, here's what I think simultaneously makes you unique, but makes you a magnet for a lot of haters and critics, and more specifically, black male haters and critics. He said, I was listening to you and it made me revisit your Wikipedia page. And in your Wikipedia page, you mentioned your parents. And you could kind of get a sense of how you grew up just from reading your Wikipedia page. And he said, it was really a lengthy email, so I'm trying to paraphrase so I don't get too lengthy, but he basically said, Alan, on the compliment end, you're very unique for a dating coach. And he said, that's why I think you'll always have a special place in the manosphere, because you're very unique. Because he said, I think you already know, he said, if you pay attention to most men who drop game on women, basically give dating advice to women, he said, particularly black men, he said, most of the other black men, they fall into one of three categories. He said they either are guys that are from the streets, like we're pimps, former pimps, street hustler types, guys who basically have a street/ghetto type background. He said that's number one. He said if they weren't a pimp, a street hustler, or from the streets, second category would be guys who never went to college, or if they went to college, they didn't finish. And he said third would be guys who might have finished college, but something about their family background was maybe dysfunctional, such as their parents were divorced. They didn't get along with their mom. They didn't get along with their dad. The dad was non-existent in their life. He said, almost all black men that I'm aware of that are a dating coach or a PUA or something, he said they in one of those three categories. Again, he said they either come from a background where they were a pimp, a street hustler, or just have a ghetto street background. They never went to college, or if they went to college, they didn't finish, or something about their family background to do with their relationship with their parents was dysfunctional. At minimum, their parents were divorced, or they had a strained relationship with their mother, a strained relationship with their father, or even both. And he said, what makes you unique is that you don't fall under any of those three categories. He said, starting with the first category, he said, you didn't grow up in the streets or in the ghetto. He said, I don't know everything about your background, but what I can tell just from your Wikipedia page, you grew up in like a middle class or even an upper middle class type family. Your father was a doctor. Your mother, both your parents were college educated. As far as I know, they stayed married until they died. So they were never divorced. He said that number one makes you unique. You come from a two-parent, middle class / upper middle class background. He said, you yourself, not only are your parents college educated, you have a degree and you did at least 1 year of graduate work in college. And well, I think that covers all three of those categories he mentioned. Yeah. Because I didn't grow up in the streets, even though I have relatives who are very streetish, as I mentioned many times before. But no, I didn't grow up in the ghetto or in the streets. So that eliminates category number one. I was never officially a pimp or a street hustler or anything like that. Number two, I have a college degree and I did 1 year of MBA school. And number three, my parents are both college educated and they did stay married until my father died in 2002, then my mother died in 2007. So he said on just that alone, he said that makes you incredibly unique. He said, because I can't think of another dating coach or PUA, and particularly a black dating coach or black PUA, that is just like you. He said, almost everybody else is in one of those three categories that I mentioned. They either from the streets, they don't have a degree, or they had some type of family dysfunction. At minimum, their parents got divorced, or they had a strained relationship with their mother and or father. He said, and again, he's not the first person, actually pointed, one of the first person I can think of, well, technically two people pointed this out before this follower did this weekend. If some of my, I don't know about my non-black followers, but most of my black followers are familiar with a brother named Tony Maceo, who you can find on the Mac City Limits podcast. He was one of the first brothers to bring that to my attention a few months after I got on YouTube. Matter of fact, he started giving me a name because of that. He would call me, he would say, Alan Roger Currie is a Lucky Charms brother. A Lucky Charms brother. And honestly, I used to get offended by that label when he would always say, Alan Roger Currie is Lucky Charms. But he would explain to me, he said, man, I'm not trying to insult you. I don't remember the exact words, but paraphrase, he basically said, what I'm trying to say is, man, you have a unique background that not too many brothers on YouTube have. And similar to this guy this weekend, Tony Mason, he basically said, some brothers are going to admire you because of your unique background, but other brothers are going to resent you and almost feel like you're unrelatable because of your unique background in that respect. And he said, that's why I call you a Lucky Charms brother. And then one other person who somewhat had that take on me was Mumia Obsidian Ali. Matter of fact, word of note, I actually participated on briefly on Obsidian's internet radio show last Friday. I don't want to get into all the detail, but I heard, my name. I just happened to be listening because I got a notice on his community page about it. So I decided to tune in. Sure enough, my name ended up being mentioned, and I called in, but that's another story for another day. But if y'all know the backstory, my history with Mumia Obsidian Ali, when he first came after me, that was one of his criticisms against me. He basically, in so many words, said, Alan Roger Currie, I think he gives some good advice, but I don't think he's really relatable to the everyday brother, what he called the everyday brother, because he said, man, Alan Roger Currie, number one, he's above average looking. He's college educated. He comes from a 2-parent, middle-class family. And he basically tried to make the argument that not too many brothers are going to be able to relate to him. Even if he's giving you good advice, a lot of brothers ain't going to be able to relate to him. And anyway, that's what this guy this weekend who wrote me this long email was saying. He said it's kind of positive negative. He said, man, you're very unique in that respect, Alan. But he said, I think also on the negative end, you probably have alienated a lot of brothers because similar to that 3 pimp story you told, because he was familiar with the 3 pimp story, they probably tend to have attitude like, oh man, you a college boy. You ain't really been, mixing it up in the streets. How did you gain all this knowledge, wisdom, and insight about dealing with women, particularly street-type women, when you didn't grow up in the streets? Come on, man. If you black and you got relatives, you even if you didn't per se grow up in the streets yourself, you've interacted. I had middle school classmates, high school classmates that were from the streets. I got cousins that are from the streets. So it ain't like I'm this naive, one of the Huxtable kids from the Cosby Show that's been sheltered from quote unquote harsh street life. And particularly when I lived in Los Angeles. When I lived in Los Angeles, I used to interact with a lot of street types. I used to play video games with gangbangers, man. So it ain't like I've lived this sheltered life that I don't, But anyway, I just thought it was interesting, man. You would have to read his whole email. His whole email was very lengthy. It's probably like about 7 paragraphs long. But he was essentially saying, he said, yeah, Alan, I think that's what makes you unique. And I had to think about that. The biggest thing he had me thinking, I was like, what other dating coaches are just like me in that regard, that don't fit into those 3 categories? The closest I could think of, just off the top of my head, was Ron Wills. I know Ron Wills, in terms of, if nothing else, in terms of being college educated. Ron Wills has a college degree. But I don't know about his overall, how he was raised, like if he was raised in the streets, if he was raised in the middle class, and I don't know about his family background as far as whether his parents were divorced or not. I don't know any of that stuff about Ram. But I do know Ram. Ram has a college degree, though. So he's at least one other dating coach I know who's college educated. But as far as other dating coaches who, again, didn't grow up in a street or lower socioeconomic background, B, have at least a bachelor's degree, and C, their parents were not divorced. Their parents stayed married until either their mother or father passed away. I don't know who else falls into that category. So if somebody does know of another coach, dating coach and or PUA who's just like me in that regard, please list them in my comment section, because I don't know. But this guy who wrote me the email was saying, he said, Alan, I feel like you're the only dating coach, and particularly the only Black dating coach, that fits that criteria, man. And again, he said he felt like it was simultaneously a positive and negative thing. He said he feels like some brothers, because it is kind of true, man. I ain't gonna say this is true about all brothers, but some brothers do tend to feel like, if you didn't grow up in the streets, what do you really know about game, or as those pimps call street game? What do you really know about game? If you grew up in a middle class or upper middle class. But matter of fact, speaking of this, and then I'm gonna move on. If you read my 1999 version of Mo 1, and I want to say even my 2006 paperback version of Mo 1, I actually briefly mentioned that, related to my background in that regard. I actually said that something, I don't remember my exact words, but paraphrase my own words. I basically said that if you're a person who grew up in the streets, you might be inclined to naturally be Mo 1, to naturally express yourself verbally in a very bold, upfront, unapologetic, straightforward manner, because you just really don't give a fuck what people think about you. I talked about that in that video earlier this year when I was talking about Black social stratification. I said most brothers who grow up in the streets, they don't really give a fuck what people think about them. So, and more often than not, they tend to naturally be straightforward in their verbal communication. But I basically said in my book, in the 1999 version, I believe the 2006 version, I said, but when you grow up in a middle class or upper middle class environment, and you come from like a 2-parent family, I said it's going to be more frowned on for you to express yourself verbally in that type of manner. And from my life experiences, observation, that tends to be true, man. Yeah, when you come from a middle class, upper middle class background, man, it's going to be frowned on you to be very frank and candid and forthright with people, in simple terms, very blunt, particularly as it relates to expressing your sexual desires, interests, and intentions. That's heavily frowned on in middle class and upper middle class circles, more so than lower socioeconomic circles. So yeah, I have pointed that out myself before. Okay, now getting to one of my 2 major points I want to cover. Again, I'm going to cover one of these 2 major points in the free version, and I'm going to cover the second in my Patreon exclusive portion. And the first thing that I heard on a live stream, I don't know if it was a live stream or a pre-recorded podcast that a follower sent me, was a guy, and again, this is not the first time I've heard this argument. A guy was making an argument basically that the way today's society is, with women being as in his words, essentially, he was saying Women today, he was basically saying, are just no good. And a lot of guys tend to echo those sentiments. He's saying a lot of women are just no good in society today. And they're not really worth a man investing time, effort, and money to pursue. He basically, in so many words, said, the best thing I think men should do is just, improve themselves to the point where they become as desirable as possible to women. So he did, in his own way, endorse self-improvement. But he said, I think most men today should wait for women to make the first move on them. For women to essentially come to them. And as you know, within the parameters of my teachings, that's what's known as a mode zero scenario. A mode zero scenario. Yeah. I have 4 variations of mode 1. Mode 0, mode 1 hardcore, regular or default mode 1, and mode 1.5. And mode 0 is a scenario where a woman approaches you first and initiates a conversation with you first, and all you got to do is close the deal. And that's what this guy was basically promoting. He was saying all guys should wait for a mode 0 scenario, in so many words, is what he was promoting. Here's what I would say on that. I'm not going to say that's totally invalid, but I'm not going. On the flip side, I'm going to say that's not totally valid either. As you know, I always talk about there's 5 general ways of getting a woman in bed: attraction, seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, financial negotiation, and coercion. Waiting for a woman to come to you would fall under attraction. That would fall under attraction. Here's when you can get away with that. Just permanently just sitting back and waiting for women to come to you. And I think I say this, I'm almost certain I say this in my book, Ooh, Say It Again. There's a chapter where I point out where a guy is going to be in the best situation to kind of just sit back and let women come to him. And that is when you're amazingly good looking. When you're amazingly good looking, most women you run into find you amazingly good looking. You're extremely wealthy and or famous. Extremely wealthy and or famous. And I want to say third is when you're just oozing with masculine sex appeal and or women who come in contact with you know that you have a very popular reputation for pleasing and satisfying women in bed. That's pretty much the only 3 categories of men that can generally just pretty much for their entire adult life just kind of sit back and wait for women to approach them first. Is if women consider you pretty much amazingly good looking, consider you exceptionally handsome. Like, honestly, if I had to put myself in that category at least once, and I've said this before, if there was at least 1 year I was in that category, it was my senior in high school. Like, my senior in high school, I would probably say 95% of the women I dealt with my senior in high school, they came to me. I didn't pursue women. If there was at least 1 year in my life that I really didn't pursue women, it was my senior in high school. Yeah, I'd say probably 95% of women I had romantic or sexual interactions with, they hit on me first. They came to me. Yeah, my senior in high school, I was like that. So yeah, I would say if you're just, women just consider you just like exceptionally good looking, amazingly good looking. Number 2 category is if you're extremely wealthy and or famous, like a famous celebrity, like say entertainment industry celebrity, a professional athlete, a well-known businessman, a well-known politician, somewhere where you're in the public eye, you're both have a high degree of fame, notoriety, and social status. And on top of that, you have a high degree of wealth. You can, a good example of somebody who's a celebrity that actually endorsed that attitude or that belief, and I've mentioned it before, is George Clooney. He said that in a Playboy interview. George Clooney basically said, he didn't like being rejected. He said he hated being rejected. He said he hated being rejected. And he said, he basically admitted that over half the reason why he wanted to be a rich, famous entertainment industry celebrity was so he wouldn't have to chase women, pursue women. He said he wanted women to come to him, basically throw themselves at him. And there's been other notable celebrities who said that. I've named a few others. I don't feel like doing it now, but yeah, there's at least a half a dozen other male celebrities who said that that's one of the things that motivated them to want to be a rich, famous entertainment industry celebrity, because they didn't want to have to pursue women. They wanted women to come to them. And so that's the second category, next to being exceptionally good looking, is being either wealthy, famous, or both. And the third category is just being a guy that your demeanor, the way you carry yourself is just oozing with masculine sex appeal, and or you have such a reputation as a ladies' man or prolific womanizer that, there's a saying that his reputation precedes him. Most of you all, I'm sure, have heard that phrase, like this. Oh yeah, that guy, his reputation precedes him. That means everybody knows your rep, so they pretty much know it about him before they have their first conversation with you. And there's some guys who are like that. That's what I call, if you remember in my book, Who's Saying Again, and on some of my videos, I call that referral pussy. Referral pussy. Referral pussy is when you have a well-known, it could be on a particular college campus, it could be in a particular neighborhood, a particular city, where you have such a reputation for being this smooth, seductive ladies' man and being this prolific womanizer, and more specifically, you're known for leaving women feeling pleased and satisfied in bed, that you really don't have to spit no game with women. Women already know that you have above average to exceptional bedroom skills, so they pretty much just give you the pussy based on your reputation for satisfying women in bed. But those are only three categories of men that are going to be able to just sit back and wait for women to come to them. But honestly, if you don't fall into one of those three categories, you're going to have to approach women. If you want to have a reasonably decent level of successful women, you're going to have to approach certain women, man. I mean, I consider myself reasonably good looking, smooth and seductive. I've never been rich. I've never technically been famous, but I've always felt like I needed to approach, particularly for casual sex, man. I've always felt like I needed to make the first move on most of the women that I've had casual sex with. And see, let's get down to the nitty gritty, man. And this is what this podcaster was leaving out. The main reason why a lot of guys are adopting that attitude is not simply because they feel like most women are low quality and worthless and not worthy of pursuing. But let's just keep shit 100% real. Most guys are dreadfully afraid of rejection. Most guys are dreadfully afraid of rejection, man. Most guys are dreadfully afraid of rejection. Man, that's one of the known things that basically sets the stage for a man's overall behavior with women, is how afraid he is or how afraid he's not of rejection, man. That's one of the known things that shapes a man's behavior, his social behavior with women, is how fearful he is of these two things. And of course, if you read my books, I emphasize these two. It's his fear of being rejected and or ignored. And secondly, his fear of being criticized, insulted, or publicly embarrassed. His fear of being rejected and or indefinitely ignored, or his fear of being criticized, insulted, or publicly embarrassed and humiliated. Those two fears profound. One thing I've always said, if you've been following me for a while, I've always said this. There's three general things that will shape your behavior in general. Three general things that will shape a man, not only would I say a man's behavior, but even a woman's behavior. And that's your desires, your strongest desires, your strongest fears, and your overall life's experiences and observations. Three things that shape your behavior, man, as a human being, and particularly as a man, is your most profound, strongest desires, your most profound, strongest fears, and your overall life experiences and observations. Those three things together is the three general things that shape any human being's behavior. Is what you want the most, what you're scared of the most, and just your past experiences and observations. What you want the most, what you're scared of the most, and your past experiences and observations. That's what basically makes you who you are. And under the category of fears, man, fear of rejection, man, that's the main reason why I pointed out before why you have some men who favor direct verbal game and other men who favor indirect verbal game. Most men who favor indirect verbal game are men who are profoundly afraid of abrupt, instantaneous rejection. That's the number one guys who are always going to favor indirect game. It's guys who are afraid of being quickly, straightforwardly, and abruptly rejected, like say rejected within the first 2 to 3 minutes of their conversation with a woman. And secondly, guys who are very afraid of being criticized, insulted, or publicly embarrassed and humiliated. I'm the number one guys who are going to always favor indirect game. Like over half of what I do as a dating coach, is help men overcome or at minimum diminish their fear of rejection, diminish their fear of being rejected by women, diminish their fear of being indefinitely ignored by women, and diminish their fear of being criticized, insulted, and publicly embarrassed and humiliated by women. And that's why a lot of guys favor this belief that you should just sit back and let women come to you, because among other things, you don't put yourself in a position to get rejected. But again, only a certain percentage of guys can get away with that. The average, I'm going to make it just a strong statement, the average Joe Schmo is never going to be able to get away with that. And see, this is one of my criticisms of a lot of MGTOW enthusiasts. There's some things, tenets of MGTOW that you could say I more or less respect. But the big glaring weakness of MGTOW is simply this. Because a lot of guys who are MGTOW basically believe that you should never, some MGTOWs go as far as believe you shouldn't interact with women, period. That almost essentially you should become a monk. That's kind of the real extreme version of MGTOW, is those guys who just don't believe you should get married to women. They don't believe you should be in a long-term relationship with a woman. And in many cases, they don't even believe you should engage in short-term, non-monogamous casual sex with women. They believe you should just totally avoid women. That's an extreme faction of MGTOW. The more conventional or conservative faction of MGTOW, they still usually believe, if nothing else, in still having casual sex with women, but they believe that you should let the women come to you. Well, actually, some MGTOWs believe in tricking. There are some MGTOW guys who are MGTOW that believe in tricking. And that usually involves the man making the first move. But there's some MGTOWs that believe that the women should come. But here's what I've always told MGTOW guys. What good is it for you to ignore a woman if you're already being ignored by women? Boom. What good is it for you to go out of your way to ignore women if women are already ignoring you? If you're a guy who's already being ignored by women, do you think women are going to really miss you if you ignore them? No. And that's why a lot of you guys got to get on YouTube and insult women and complain about women and talk trash about them, because you deep down, you know that. Deep down, you know that. You know if you didn't whine and bitch about women and just was to remain silent and at the same time ignore women, those women wouldn't miss you. Those women wouldn't miss you. The average Joe Schmo, if he decides to ignore women, ain't no woman gonna miss him. In other words, if you're not above average looking, if you're not particularly wealthy or famous or financially generous, if you have a very boring personality or irritating personality or a creepy personality, what woman is going, and final thing, if you got less than, you're perceived as having less than average bedroom skills, what woman is going to miss you? Seriously, what woman is going to miss you? Not a one. Not a one. And a lot of you guys, and even more particular, a lot of you MGTOW enthusiasts, deep down y'all know that. Deep down y'all know that. But y'all don't want to come out and publicly say it, but y'all know that. And that's what provokes a lot of y'all to do the whining and bitching that you do, the public trashing of women that you do, because deep down you know that. You ain't good looking, you ain't rich, you ain't famous, you have a boring personality, creepy personality, irritating personality, or you perceived as having less than desirable bedroom skills. If you spent the rest of your life ignoring women, ain't no woman gonna miss you. And some of y'all need to own up to that. So, hey, I'm gonna say this, man. If a lot of y'all do want to choose to adopt that belief that you should just wait for women to approach you, I say good luck. Good luck. But I'm telling you, the vast majority of y'all are going to be unsuccessful using that approach or adhering to that belief. Most of y'all are going to be unsuccessful. Y'all ain't going to attract the quality of women that you want to attract or the quantity of women that you want to attract. I guarantee y'all put money on it. You're not. You're not. If you're going to always wait for women to make the first move on you, good luck. Again, the number one guys who are going to be successful adhering to that philosophy and that belief is guys who are above average to exceptionally good looking, guys who are rich, famous, or both, or guys who have are oozing with masculine sex appeal, and even more so have a reputation among women for being very, very good and satisfying in bed. If you ain't in one of them three categories, you ain't gonna have much success waiting for women to approach you first. Now, speaking of that, it's interesting. I can hate on a lot of the shit that guys say on YouTube, but here's an interesting thing. Some of you know this already, but some of you might not know. You know, actually my current girlfriend, who I just spent time with this weekend, my brother's birthday was yesterday, so we all went out to dinner in Chicago yesterday. And as you can see in the picture, that's my girlfriend sitting in front of me. You know, I met my girlfriend on YouTube. That's how I met my girlfriend, was here on YouTube. And two things interesting about me and my girlfriend's relationship. Number one, about this subject of waiting for women. I actually didn't pursue my girlfriend. She actually found me. I didn't find her. She found me. She happened to watch one of my videos. You know how, if you're on YouTube, how it has suggested videos? She was watching some other videos, and one of the suggested videos that came up on her YouTube page was that video I did called ARC Gets Hardcore Real. That was the video where I first admitted publicly. A lot of guys already knew I had a lot of women who were BDSM submissives of mine. But I had never publicly admitted that a percentage of them were married or engaged to be married or had boyfriends. Because I always like to point out that I stopped fucking women who were married, engaged to be married, or had boyfriends at the age of 37. But yeah, I admitted in that video that I have some women who are BDSM clients of mine or BDSM submissives of mine that are married, engaged to be married, or have boyfriends. Anyway, that's the video where she found me, that she first discovered me, and she said she became intrigued by me, and the rest is history. Now we cohabitating. But anyway, so that was point number one. I want to point out about the whole, should you as a man wait for women to come to you as opposed to you approaching them? Again, the main reason why guys are going to adopt that belief is mainly because they're afraid of rejection. And now, in my Patreon exclusive portion, I'm going to talk about something else I heard, which was this assertion that somebody made. Somebody made an assertion that if a woman is very, very attracted to you, that you don't have to possess game or have a strong mouthpiece, that the woman is just pretty much going to throw herself at you, and that a woman's going to make it incredibly easy for you to get in their pants. That's not true. If that was true, you wouldn't have the archetypes of the wholesome pretender and the erotic hypocrite. You would only have reciprocators. You wouldn't have wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. So I'm going to go into detail about that in my Patreon exclusive portion. Okay. Yeah, now that we're in the Patreon exclusive portion, well, first thing I want to do, hold on one second. I was talking about that the three main things that shape a man's life is his desires, his fears, and his experiences and observations. Now, under the category of desires, I'm going to give you what I feel is the four major desires that shape a man's behavior. Four main desires that shape a man's behavior. It's just my own opinion. It's not based on like scientific research or anything like that. It's just Alan Roger Currie's own evaluation and assessment and assertion. Desire number one. The desire to hopefully delay death for as long as possible and generally protect themselves and their loved ones from murder, rape, and physical pain. That's the number one desire that I think that contributes to a large part of any man's behavior in life. Not only his behavior towards women, but his behavior towards other men and just how he proceeds to conduct himself in life. Is a strong desire to not die prematurely, to not have a premature young death. Although there are some guys who want to die young. There's some guys, believe it or not, who want to die young. If not want to die young, they expect to die young. Like I was talking about, black men who grew up in lower socioeconomic areas. I know I've met young black men from the streets or from the ghetto, man. They didn't expect to live past the age of 29. I wouldn't say they didn't want to live past the age of 29, but they didn't expect to. They expected to be murdered by no later than the age of 29, which is sad. But yeah, there are some men who do. Not only black guys, but non-black guys who expect to die at an early age. Then there's even a very small percentage of guys who want to. I've heard guys say they don't want to live today in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They want to die young. Particularly if they want to be some type of martyr. But anyway, no one desire I think that shapes man's behavior is when you have a strong desire to delay death. In other words, you want to live as old as possible. And secondly, you want to avoid as much dangerous and or physically harmful situations as possible. You want to avoid as many dangerous and or physically harmful situations and scenarios as possible. I think that's one of the number one things that drives most men's behavior. Another prominent desire that I think shapes a man's life is his desire to earn enough money to live a high quality life and avoid being flat broke and or homeless. The desire to earn enough money to live a high quality life and avoid being flat broke and or homeless. Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of man's most powerful desires. I would probably rank that no lower than his second strongest desire. No man wants to live his adult life just full of financial struggles, high debt, and even in more extreme cases, just being flat broke and homeless. No guy wants to live that type of life. At least no guy that I know of. That's not to say every single guy wants to be a millionaire, a multimillionaire, or billionaire. I would never suggest that because I know some guys who don't want to be a millionaire or multimillionaire or billionaire. But all guys want to earn enough money to be what's generally known as financially responsible and financially self-sufficient. Financially responsible and financially self-sufficient. I think most men want to earn at minimum enough money to be financially responsible, to pay their bills, their month-to-month living expenses, and just, to keep a roof over their head, keep food in their belly, and just prevent themselves from being homeless. So yeah, that's definitely a very, very strong desire that I think shapes men's lives. Another prominent desire would be the desire to leave a legacy for his achievements and accomplishments either after he retires from his career and or after he passes away, and or a desire to earn a high degree of respect from his peers and his fellow man. One of those two, if not both. Again, the desire to leave a legacy for his achievements and accomplishments after he retires from his career or after he passes away, and or the desire to earn a high degree of respect from his peers and fellow man. Yeah, there's a lot of men, I wouldn't say all men, but a lot of men want to leave some type of legacy, either at maximum after they die or at minimum after they retire from their career. Like, I know a lot of professional athletes are like that. They want people to remember them after their playing days are over. Like, look at Michael Jordan, for example. He's considered an NBA legend, which simply means people are still talking about him after he retired from the game. That's what it means to be a legend. You hear that word thrown around like so-and-so's a legend. When you're a legend, that means people still talk about you after you're no longer in their presence. That's what it means. Like, a good movie to watch in that regard is this movie. Did anybody see this movie called Whiplash? About this guy who wants to be one of the top drummers in the world? Man, that's a good movie. But the main character in that movie, he makes that. He's at a dinner, a family dinner. That's one of the things he says. He basically says so many words. He says, I don't just want to be a good drummer. He said, I want to be a legendary drummer. He basically says, I want people to still talk about me after I retire from being a drummer and after I die. I want people to still be talking about me. He basically said, I want to be a legend. Man, that's one reason why, honestly, I'll be honest, that's one reason why I take pride on being on Wikipedia. Like, some people tease me for always mentioning the fact I'm on Wikipedia. But one thing that Wikipedia does is it almost, I ain't gonna say it 100% guarantees, but for the most part, it ensures that I will have a legacy that will live on after I die. Secondly, my books. That's why I like having books, and particularly paperback books, is because it helps cement my legacy. People will still be talking about me after I die. Yeah. Now again, not all men aspire to be any type of legend, but people who are a combination of, for lack of a better word, egotistical and extremely ambitious, they typically want to be a legend. I'll openly admit I do. I want people to still be talking about me in the contents of my books for years, decades, and even centuries after my death. I want people to be still talking about me and more so the contents of my books and my knowledge, wisdom, and insight for years, decades, and even centuries after my death. Even if people don't want to be more or less a legend, at minimum, while they're alive, most men want an above average degree of respect from their peers, people in their general age group, and from their fellow man. Nobody likes to feel like they're a nobody or that they're disrespected. And then the final desire that I think shapes a man's behavior in his life, and I would say more specifically, a heterosexual man, and this relates to me being a dating coach, would simply be the desire to attract and maintain the romantic interest of one special woman for a long-term romantic relationship or marriage, and or the desire to attract and seduce multiple attractive and desirable short-term non-monogamous casual sex lovers. Now, that desire is actually in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. I've mentioned that before. So I can't say that desire is something that came out of my head. I originated out of my head. If you read this classic self-help book called Think and Grow Rich, written by this author named Napoleon Hill, he basically says that. He basically says in so many words that the number one thing that he believes motivates most heterosexual men to want to achieve a high degree of career success and financial success is either one of those two desires I mentioned, if not both, combined together. Either the desire to attract the interest of one special woman that they want to be their wife or their cohabitation partner or their long-term romantic companion, and or the desire to fuck as many beautiful, sexy women as humanly possible. He says one of those two desires, if not both, is one of the strongest things that motivates men to want to achieve a high degree of career success and financial success. And I would agree with Napoleon Hill. Yeah. So I heard a guy on a clip of a live stream say something to the effect of, man, I don't even think about women, man. Women aren't even really a part of my life. I just concentrate on my purpose. I focus on my purpose. I focus on my career goals, my financial goals. I focus on keeping my body in shape. But man, I could care less about women. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That is straight up bullshit. Insert dog face here. You're lying to yourself. If you're a heterosexual man, unless you genuinely have a strong desire to live the rest of your life as a monk, as a voluntarily celibate monk, then you are full of shit if you're telling people that women don't play into your motivation for self-improvement at all. That's bullshit. Your desire to hook up with women either improve the quality of women you interact with and or improve the quantity of women you interact with is always going to contribute to your motivation for self-improvement. Always. Anybody who says otherwise, they a fucking liar. They a fucking liar, man. They a fucking liar. So yeah, that's bullshit. But yeah, this guy, there was a guy on I don't know if it was a live stream or a pre-recorded podcast, said that if a woman is really attracted to you, then there would be really no need for game. There would be no need to develop a smooth, seductive mouthpiece. And he said, along with that, they're going to make it incredibly easy for you to have sex with them. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a bullshit statement that person knows good and well they can't substantiate with any concrete evidence. That's a lie. Again, if that was true, then that would eliminate my archetype of the wholesome pretender, and that would eliminate my archetype of the erotic hypocrite. You could just flat out eliminate it. If what that person said was true, there would be wholesome pretender types and erotic hypocrite types would be non-existent. That would be non-existent. All women would either be reciprocators or rejectors. All women would either be reciprocators or rejectors. If that were true. If that assertion was true. Just because a woman finds you physically attractive and sexually appealing does not necessarily mean that she's going to make it easy for you to get in her pants. Anybody who believes that is incredibly naive, bordering on being delusional. That is not true. I would say particularly when it comes to short-term non-monogamous casual sex. Particularly when it comes to short-term non-monogamous casual sex, I would say that's definitely not true. That is definitely not true. The only women who I would say that statement would be true for would be women who are reciprocators. If a woman's a reciprocator, as you know, a reciprocator, that's a woman that knows pretty much within the first 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes after she meets you that she definitely wants to date you, or that she definitely wants to engage in multiple episodes, one or more episodes of casual sex with you. And she don't really care who doesn't like that or who criticizes that. That's when a woman's going to be a reciprocator. When she knows pretty much from the time she meets you that she either wants to engage in long-term monogamous sex with you, long-term non-monogamous sex with you, short-term monogamous sex, or short-term non-monogamous sex. And she really doesn't care who has, critical thoughts or comments about that. That's when a woman's going to be a reciprocator. So when it comes to reciprocators, then that's the one situation where I would say that I agree with that statement and that assertion. But when it comes to women who are wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites, I vehemently disagree with that assertion. Wholesome pretenders. Wholesome pretender could find you very physically attractive and sexually appealing, and she's still not going to make it extremely easy for you to get the pussy. Why? Because she cares too much about what people think. And I explain that in my books, and particularly my book, Ooh, Say It Again. She cares too much what people think. That kind of almost neutralizes her attraction for you, is that she's wholesome pretenders are women who are extremely concerned with their social image and reputation. Their social image and reputation. So when it comes to short-term, non-monogamous casual sex, they're never going to give up the pussy too quickly or too easily. Particularly if they have doubts about how discreet you are and they have doubts about how judgmental you are. If a woman, a wholesome pretender, the first thing she's going to try to determine is, are you discreet? Are you discreet? And are you non-judgmental? Are you discreet? And are you non-judgmental? If a woman can find you very physically attractive and find you very sexually appealing, but if she thinks you're indiscreet, in other words, you got a big mouth, you're going to tell her business, share her sexual business with other people, or she thinks you're a very self-righteous, judgmental type guy, she's going to be extremely reluctant to give you the pussy. She's going to be extremely reluctant to engage in casual sex with you. She's going to welcome, if you're expressing interest in engaging in long-term, strictly monogamous sex with her, she'll more than likely become a reciprocator. But if you express interest in engaging in short-term, non-monogamous casual sex with her, she's going to give you a hard time because she's worried about you being indiscreet and judgmental. Erotic hypocrites, they're going to give you a hard time for the same reasons as a wholesome pretender. And on top of that, erotic hypocrites are women who are usually a combination of pretentious and materialistic. They're not only concerned about their social image and reputation, but on top of that, they tend to be very pretentious. They tend to be very materialistic. And to one degree or another, they tend to be very argumentative and or antagonistic. In other words, they like to challenge men's masculinity. They like to challenge your manhood to see if they can emasculate you on the spot. So that's why they ain't gonna give you the pussy real quick. Because again, for the same reasons as a wholesome pretender, but on top of that, they're just naturally pretentious, they're materialistic, and they're argumentative and or antagonistic. So even if they find you physically attractive or sexually appealing, they're still going to give you a hard time. Matter of fact, they're going to give you a very hard time. More so than the average wholesome pretender. So what that podcaster said is bullshit. It's a false statement. It's a false statement. It's a false statement. It's total bullshit. And that's the main reason why I wrote my book, Who Said Again. The main reason I wrote my book, Who Said Again, is to help men seduce wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites. Because again, if what this podcast said was true, was 100% true, there would be no need for the concept of seduction. For all practical purposes, there would be no need for seduction. And actually, that's what this podcast, the argument he was really trying to make. He was trying to argue that essentially that game, and particularly verbal game and having a mouthpiece, was extremely overrated and even unnecessary. That it was overrated, if not flat out unnecessary. And that's bullshit. Where do you think the concept of seduction comes into play? So again, just because a woman finds you physically attractive and sexually appealing does not make guarantee that she's going to make it easy for you to get in her pants. That's bullshit. Some women, again, the women who fall under the archetype of a reciprocator, that would be true. Wholesome pretenders, erotic hypocrites, false. Very extremely false. All right. That's all I got for you today. I'll probably come back with at least one other video tomorrow, the next day, Thursday or Friday. We'll see. All right, fellas. Talk to you later.